sent Josh a new Zoom link, so he should be jumping on here shortly, and we can get going.
Prosecutor, have you talked to him yet?
I'm not.
Nate is here, let's go.
Yeah, we can.
I just came so I could be up here to catch my breath before I had to do something.
Damn elevator. Is it still on target to be fixed by Friday?
Hopefully, I
I
hope,
think he said it was gonna be before.
really,
Excellent.
hopefully.
I was hoping it was gonna be today. Wasn't so.
No, that's good.
Where is,
Hey Josh, can you hear us? Alright, let me turn the video on here.
so is he at Disney World or something, or what?
He's home on Oxford.
Really, we got an arch behind his head.
Yeah, it's a screenshot of Purdue.
Oh.
I thought that was the Purdue arch on the screen.
Sure is.
What you need is an HDMI cord, and you can put them up on the big TV.
We don't wanna see that much of it.
Well, you guys would be okay, you wouldn't be looking.
That's right.
You're up.
I just texted you.
Oh, you did?
I didn't know if you were in court or anything.
Must be, that's okay. I told him I had this going on, so.
Okay.
Nick, I'd like to say you did a really good job of explaining why you want what you want. Very good.
Well, I'm gonna exchange most of that.
Oh, very good, Nick.
You talking about the typed up stuff? Yeah, he did all that. Yeah.
Good explanation.
He likes doing budget stuff, so I let him.
Alright. Start on page 10. I guess we'll wait on. You sure? Alright. Think we're set. Ready.
Okay, just any questions you have, I can answer them. We tried to explain as best we could, what we asked for and why we asked for it. I don't have too much else to say, I don't wanna waste you guys' time, so whatever questions you may have, I'll try to answer them as best I can. There were some changes made by Beth, but I think that's just the way they have to go listed in the budget.
They've gone according to the numbers.
Sure. So, I mean, but,
I didn't change any of the figures.
right, none of the figures, just, right, what line item they're out of, or what have you.
Pretty explanatory in the explanation.
I can talk about the pre-trial fund if you want, that's always a little complicated, but we tried to explain as best we could in the explanation about, we always have a surplus, if you will, or a carry-on from the year before. So even though we may only bring in a certain amount, we always have surplus from the year before, which we did, we're gonna have this year as well, so that's how we got the figure we got in that.
kind of like the bigger argument that I normally recall us having about, you think you should be able to spend it, and we say, no.
Well, I think
Probably should.
it's a budgeting issue. You can only budget close to the amount that you predict you're gonna be bringing in. Because the excess or the extra at the end of the year, I think, can be utilized. Just, it's not correct to budget it that way. Is that close?
Well, I think you guys were doing new monies, and so when Jackie heard that, she was saying, the new money that he's gonna get in, or, for instance, he didn't have that much money in his cash line last year, 96,000.
Right.
He wanted,
Right.
and so he wouldn't budget out with the state, like the DLGF. So that's where that was coming from.
Sure. Well, and then the other thing,
And
my
where
big
is that-
complaint
where is
about that is
we're
that,
talking about on here? Is it pretrial or?
That's
yes,
free trial.
Free trial conversion.
But you're not gonna see his, balances on,
But it could
on
be-
a worksheet.
It could be advertised as an additional.
Yes.
And utilized.
Right. You can still, he was trying to not use the additional
Yes.
process, because it
Right.
takes 2 months to get back to.
so what I think the big argument for me last year was that the State Board of Accounts said you can't budget any more than $30,000 in that account, because that's all you brought in for the year before. Where my argument was, yes, that's all we brought in the year before, but we started the year with monies in there already. We started the year with, I think, 25,000 in there. So really, if you include what I bring in for the year plus what we had in from the carryover year, it was about 50 or 60,000 that I could have spent. But I was only allotted what we were to bring in for that year. So I think I was only allotted for this year for 29,000, even though we started the year with, I think, 25,000. And so then I brought in, and so we've got 50,000 essentially in there, but we can't spend 20,000 of it.
You can.
We have to ask for an additional, right, sorry, we have to ask for an additional, which
Go
was,
through that extra.
and it was just kind of a
Yeah,
pain to do when we're doing everything else, to advertise, and it took a while, and just
And that's
caused
what
kind
the
of a backup.
DLGF does, they look at what
Right.
you have and what new monies you're coming in, and that's what Jackie was trying to explain.
Right, and I think it somehow got lost in translation there last year, but we had a lot of money left over from 2020 that carried over. And that's why there's such a big budget in there now, because we're gonna have money left over from this year too, that we didn't spend.
As of, I pulled that figure, as of June, I believe, at that point, we brought in, 23,000 and some change. And I don't know if it's right to say, well, that was the 6-month level, so you just double that for the next 6 months, because you never know.
Right.
That's why Jackie has the figure, she has figures that what is projected to come in.
If I may elaborate a little further, I think part of the issue last year, I think Mr. McClellan's submitted budget may have been 90,000 or 120 originally, which was consistent with what Rob Ives did when he was prosecutor. Typically, the council, at least at that time, didn't really, or DLGF, I'll blame DLGF, didn't really seem to mind. There's conflicting guidance. DLGF typically for every other fund says you can't budget more than what your anticipated revenues and what your reserves are. For that pretrial diversion fund, there is guidance from the Indiana Prosecuting Attorneys Council that kind of guides that fund that says you can budget without regard for anticipated revenues and what you have. Either way, we try to formulate our pretrial budget appropriation, or our line items, our budget, to include reserves, anticipated revenue, and nothing above that. So we should have a budget that, no matter which way DLGF looks at it, should be fine in their eyes.
Any other questions?
See here in Jackie's report here, it says estimated revenue is 31,680, that's what she's going to tell you. So,
That's what we're expected to bring in new money for 2022. Right.
For 2022, or is that for the remainder of this year?
2022. Estimated revenue, this report?
Yes.
Okay, so if you look at, this is estimated revenue, January to December, and you go down to pretrial, it will tell you it's 31. It will, 31,680. That's what she did.
Okay.
And plus, it's kind of some of your positions that you were only budgeting, not because it doesn't matter what the LGF does or whatever
She's busy.
pretrial board.
I haven't
You were saying we're only gonna budget these numbers. So that's another reason why she kept saying that. She'll be here tomorrow.
And when we built this, we anticipated, we did a conservative estimate of 30,000, knowing that typically DLGF does 90% of what they actually think. So we put 30,000 in when we were building our budget, she's at 31, so we should be safe there.
But our budget includes what we have left over at the end of the year in the fund. Because what DLGF is talking about, or the State Board of Accounts, is only money we bring in from the year. That's their estimate of only the money we bring in for you, not the money we start off with at the beginning of the year. Because we have money left over in the account, we're gonna have money left over in the account at the end of this year, to the tune of about $30,000.
And get us the
Estimated.
DLGF.
DLG, okay, sorry,
State board
DLGF.
has nothing to do with
Sorry,
it.
DLGF.
I'm kinda done with that.
Whomever the estimate is
Still
from, it's
here.
just for
Still
new money
here.
coming in.
Any other questions? No?
Oh, I do have one more. Sure. So, bonus pays or anything out of these, or did that also stop?
That all stopped. They weren't approved, they were approved for a line item for a number of years, and then that line item wasn't approved in, I think it stopped in 2020? 2019 maybe, 2019.
Now, we did,
We did
We-
some.
well, so we built into the 22 budget request one bonus pay, and I figured that would be the most contentious issue here before the council. That's within the part-time, line item. Because Diane Kelly's been with the courthouse for approximately 40-some years.
We did not use names.
Because certain individuals within our office have been there for 40-some years. We thought it appropriate, since part-time employees are currently at $11 flat, and she has received a bonus for most of her years here at the county. Thought it appropriate to include that in there as almost a type of longevity pay. We understand if you open that can of worms, then it will likely be before every department, asking for the exact same thing. But we do find it appropriate due to the years of service. And we thought it would be more appropriate than asking for a specific raise for her as a part-time employee compared to
I'm gonna need a copy.
every other part-time employee in the county. I know the council likes to keep it consistent across the departments, what part-time employees are paid.
And also too, it needs to match the salary ordinance and what your part-time people are, so.
The other part of
the
that
problem.
is we're gonna have to, we're gonna need her here more hours, because the reality is, we've got 3 murder cases pending right now, they're gonna go to trial. They'll probably be 2 to 3 weeks each. We've got an attempted murder right now, we still have the Addie Libby case open, the Florida fire open, so we've got a very busy schedule come the next 18 months. We've got 2 to 3 jury trials a month, until, June of 22. And it's only, the hopper's only getting more cases put into it, because every day we have new arrests, new tickets issued, new things issued, and so it's just gonna be a really hectic 2022 year with all those cases going on. We have the first murder trial starting October 18th, and we have 2 more after that.
Was I correct in saying that, Beth, that the problem is that the part-time pay has to match the salary ordinance? So how much was allocated for a bonus?
I said it in the explanation, I don't have that whole in front of me, I don't believe.
Which budget was that in?
Pre-trial diversion.
No, I think that was in,
I think you put in benefits and pre-trial
I
diversion.
didn't say, I didn't see it in pre-trial.
Okay.
If it's in the regular budget,
I think it's in pretrial diversion.
There is a line item, part-time help of 4,000.
I think that's separate.
I think it's under employee benefits, yeah.
And I don't think we just stopped that at 2019.
When,
I think it was last year.
wasn't last year, okay, whenever she retired, so maybe it was last year.
Yeah.
She didn't get her retirement year.
No, she got it
The
the
year.
next
Did
year.
you find them out?
I did, I built it into the general fund, part-time clerical line item, which the request is $11,610. 2,000 of that, was built in as a bonus, essentially, so, the other 9,610 would be however many, 16 hours a week, at $11.55 an hour times 52 weeks in a week.
I don't think you can do that. A part-time person can only work 25, at the average 25 per week. And if you're gonna pay her out like that, I
Well-
mean, that's not a part-time. And also, part-timers do not get benefits. So you're gonna have a lot of different arguments there, according to the personnel policy.
What do you mean by benefits? A bonus itself, is that what you're?
That's a benefit,
Okay.
Because the benefit has to run through a salary paycheck.
yes. It's not,
So-
well, it's still not a salary paycheck. It will just still have to be on payroll. And according to what I have to work off of is the salary ordinance. And if they put that in as a part-time position, I'm showing that we paid her way over. Can you see what I'm saying? And that's when State Board of Accounts would come in and look at that.
Right, no, I understand what she's saying. If we
Yeah.
tack on another 2,000 to what she's made for the year, and you assume it's $11.55 an hour, and then she's, would technically be over the.
And the
average
reason
hours.
you did stop that was it was professional services in your prosecutor's budget, I believe, I might be wrong.
Then out of the
And we
diversion.
didn't have a contract with her, she wasn't a contractual employee.
Right, well, it'd been done that way before I even got here,
I
and so I don't know
understand that, but
why,
that's why it stopped, I'm just
why it
trying
was
to
okay
explain.
then, and then it all of a sudden became not okay, but
Because-
that was something that was just done, and I followed suit.
The auditor, when she audited it, she found it. How's that?
So I don't know, we paid that bonus out for all those years and never had an issue, and then it became an issue. I don't know why, but
But,
Well, we quit doing contractual employees also, not just because we found it, but, I mean, that was done like, that's been 3 or 4 years ago, because like, the custodian, EMS, they all had contracts at that time. And they
yeah, I know I
quit
drafted
that. Yeah, you did,
Yeah,
part of
I know I did.
So it really comes down to if you want a
Well,
part-time
Barry
employee,
did, and then you
you need
kinda
a certain amount,
took
you just,
over.
you have to ask for a higher amount. I mean, there's just, to me, there should be no bonuses. I mean, you're paid what you're paid, and
so.
because
that-
then, like, pay, you'll open up where everybody
Right,
will
well,
think they
and
want
I
a bonus.
understand why you can't do a bonus for part-time employees, so, I guess we can factor in that $2,000 over the course of however many hours that a
So
part-time
that number
employee
really
works.
needs to go down by $2,000.
Well, not unless you wanna pay an increased hourly rate for that part-time employee, which would be our request.
I need to keep her because she's the most experienced that I have, and she's the most consistent that I have, frankly. And so with all the things that we have coming up, I don't want her to leave. I can't replace her, I can tell you that.
What constitutes professional services, Nate?
You know, Doc?
It's anything that.
I think it's,
Contract.
I think it's anything, well, I don't agree with that. I
Some
think
of it is
it's,
contract.
some of it could be, yes. I think it's anything that I think is appropriate until you get audited and told otherwise, frankly. So professional services could be someone that we have come testify, a professional, an expert, a doctor, a ballistics expert. We're gonna have a lot of lab experts and a lot of experts in the murder trials that we have coming up. Lab analysis, or lab analysts that did the analysis of all the evidence, those kind of things. So that would come into play. We have to shred certain confidential documents, right? And we hire a shredding service to do that. That's by contract. That would, I think, would be a professional service. It's kind of a wide open category, but nobody really has a definition of professional services equals this. At least not that I've seen. And so I think it's at my discretion what it is, and we try to keep it to payment for experts, payment for services we need in the office for things. That's what we try to keep it to. We do use it for when the officers, they want to do training, like we did a training this year. We did a multi-county training for the Reed School, which is a school that teaches officers how to question suspects and witnesses effectively. And we paid to have some officers participate in that, to pay for that service, so we put that in there. Stuff like when we have to back up our files, a lot of stuff is electronic now, and so we have to back those up to make sure we don't lose those, and so we pay for that out of there too. So wide category.
Thank you.
Yep, sure.
It's also people that are not paid through salary or at payroll, for instance, like his experts and things.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, any experts I need for a trial or for a hearing of any kind, really. They come up in like child molest cases where you have lab results, murder cases, drug cases. All those cases you're gonna have a lab expert come testify. That's where they come up. You gotta pay them for their time, unfortunately, so.
And I have a question for you.
Sure.
We've talked about this a couple times, but I wanted to get my head wrapped around it a little bit better. In the event, or when the Abby and Libby murder trial starts, you've said previously, I think, $1 million for that trial. Is that accurate?
Well, I can't really, that's just kind of a ballpark, because it depends on what the evidence shows, whether it's gonna be a death penalty case or life without parole case. On death penalty cases, that is the estimate, they're $1 million a try. They take 2 defense attorneys, on the defense side, they're required to have 2 attorneys, so those are expensive. You can only have attorneys that are death penalty certified. You're gonna be hard pressed to find those around here, you're probably gonna have to go to Indianapolis. You're talking Abby and Libby, the amount of, the sheer volume of evidence and tips that we've got, the defense attorneys have to go through that, and that's hours and hours and hours and hours of work. I probably will have to ask for to hire additional staff to go through all that stuff as well. Don't know how long the trial's gonna last, don't know how many defendants we're gonna have. There's just so many unknowns, I don't know, but I know that Clinton County, they just filed a death penalty, and they're concerned they're gonna have enough money to pay for that case. And so it's hard for me to say how much it's gonna be, because we don't have any arrests yet. But I anticipate it costing a lot of money to try that case.
Is that also the anticipation for the 404?
Yes. Depending on what evidence comes out, now I can't tell you that's gonna be a death penalty case or an LWOP case, I don't know that. If, knowingly, intentionally commits murder, premeditated, those are the kind of things to consider whether or not to pass for the death penalty or not. But it also, you may have, say you have 5 defendants, 5 people working in concert together, you got 5 different trials. That's the problem we have now with the murder in Florida that we're currently trying. We've arrested 3 people for it. They're presumed innocent, but we're gonna have 3 separate trials. We can't have them together.
So can I ask a question? So
Sure.
what if a county comes out and they can't afford to put these trials on? What happens?
Well, that's never happened. A county, again, I don't know every trial that's happened in the state of Indiana. To my knowledge, I've never heard a county say you can't prosecute this guy because we don't have the money. So I don't know, they find it somewhere. But they're not cheap, they're tough. I'm not excited about doing 3 trials all on the same thing, but that's part of it. And they're each probably gonna last 2 to 3 weeks, each trial. Which means I'm out of commission in my office for 2 or 3 weeks prior to the trial and then during the trial. And typically if there's conviction, you can expect an appeal. So right now, 2022 is gonna be hectic for us.
And that appeal would cost the same amount as the first trial?
Well, I can't answer that, I can't answer that.
I would just think that there would be less evidence to go through on an appeal.
I don't do appeals, so I'm not real sure. I know they're very,
Oh, but
Yeah.
does the appeal come to the county or does it go to the appellate court and then we're out of that?
I think the public defender bill for that comes to the county,
Oh, okay.
if they're entitled to a public defender. Which means they gotta be indigent, they can't afford their own attorney.
Yeah. Which I assume that $1 million figure that you're talking about is assuming public defenders.
Correct, correct. I think the most of that, a lot of that money is gonna be in attorney's fees to represent the defendant or defendants. And again, maybe that's just kind of a ballpark estimate. I have no idea what the evidence is gonna show and what's gonna happen.
Yeah, and just for the councils, I mean, we have 2 of these things sitting here for the 4 murders, Amy, Abby, and Libby, so, I mean, I don't know what you would quantify that as, like an unfunded liability, and people wanna know why we keep healthy balances in our general fund, that's why. Because at any given moment, we could have a $2 million liability become due, for those 2 trials. That's just my 2 cents. Thanks, Nick.
Yeah, and
Really good job
I
on this
mean,
budget.
plus I have the murder, I don't know, this murder we have in Florida now, this, obviously it just happened in June, and now we're coming up with the first one in trial, October 18th, I believe is gonna be the date. I'm unsure what it's gonna cost, so I may be back in front of you asking for an additional for that, because I don't know. We're not asking for life without parole or death penalty on that case, but it's a murder, and there's 3 different defendants, and there's a lot of evidence, obviously, and so, that might be a good gauge to see where we're at, so. Of course, not as much evidence in this one as Abby Libby. Abby Libby, you gotta think, let's say we caught him now, you're talking, 4 years of evidence. And so, just the sheer volume of that it's a bunch.
Well, they were talking about the relocation of the ground this morning, and like 9 file cabinets full,
Right.
stuff.
Well, you think a defense attorney is gonna want to take every lead, every tip, and track that down to try to defend his client, to say, okay, it may be this guy or this guy, so basically the defense attorney is gonna reinitiate that investigation from square one and redo it. I mean, that's what I would do if I was a defense attorney, right? Because you wanna make sure that all the people we discounted aren't the person, and so that's why it's so expensive. Okay, thanks, guys, appreciate it.
You answered my question on last night.
Okay, good, you know what, thanks, Doug. Sorry we're playing phone tag.
All right.
I had the kids and I was wrestling with them, so. Thanks, Doc.
Enjoy your budgets.
Thank you.